Good evening, everyone. And as every proper Telemite starts, I should say, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. When Sarah invited me to Edgeways, I immediately said yes, because of course it was a big honor to be even considered to be part of this experience. And immediately afterward, I stopped and asked, okay, but what do I want to talk about? And that is because I am mostly, I mean, my realm of expertise, if there is one, it's focused on Thelema, on Aleister Crowley, and it seems to me that it is a bit of like a subject that has been discussed to death in many ways. Not always the right way, but everybody knows more or less who is Aleister Crowley if they're interested in the esoterica and the occult, and to a to different degrees, people that are interested in these subjects are also interested in, I mean, at least they are aware of what dilemma is, okay? So I was thinking, well, I'm not going to talk about, subjects that maybe have been, discussed to death. Instead, I thought that it might be interesting for me to share, and maybe for you as well, I hope so, to share a specific experience that has been the highlight of, well, the last 2 years really of my life. This experience is what I called Magic Without Tears. And of course, yes, I decided to name the experience after a book by Aleister Crowley, because come on, it's just a great name, right? It is like you can't deny the man, for all his faults and flaws, he had a keen eye for marketing. Let's put it like that. And so, what is Magic Without Tears, really? I think we should go back in time to the times before. And by that I do mean the times before the pandemic hit. So we're talking about 2 years ago now. And that was a time when I was still processing one big negative experience in my life, and that was when I resigned from Ordo Templi Orientis. Ordo Templi Orientis, or O.T.O, is one of, again, when we speak about Thelema, when we speak about Aleister Crowley, most people will think of O.T.O as the order of Aleister Crowley. It's a bit more complex than that. It was one of them. And there are at least two others, the AA and the EGC, and other affiliations of the Ecclesia Gnostica. And the O.T.O also is not the magical school of Thelema. It's more a Masonic, well, I would say a quasi-para-Masonic fraternity, where in Crowley's ideas, somebody with next to no knowledge of magic would be able, and by magic I mean magic with the K, so the particular kind of magic that was taught by Aleister Crowley and that defines Thelema, to the point that I think magic with the K can be seen as the tool of Thelema. Crowley thought that the O.T.O could be a way for people, men and women alike, and every intergender, to come together and learn from the ground up. Of course, that never pans out. It never worked out the way he wanted to work out, and the O.T.O was it was never big in Crowley's time, and it's hardly big nowadays. Numbers that you will find on the internet will speak of the contemporary O.T.O, or the Caliphate O.T.O, as 4,000 people worldwide. I can tell you, as an ex-treasurer of the O.T.O, of Ameth Lodge in London, so having seen some numbers, and having spoke with other people that left and resigned in 2018 along with me, much higher degree than I was, that the real number is really worldwide around 1,500 to 2,000. So we're talking about a small group, right? Not very. I mean, we're not. How many we are right now in the world? Of 7 billion, 8 billion, I don't know. So we're talking about very little numbers. So let's say the O.T.O never really picked up. Still, it has been a very important part of my life. For a while, for I'll say several years, I made that experience the center point of my life. I really invested myself in it. I went to the degrees up until I could, and we'll get there in a second. And I was there, setting up the temple every time we have to run initiations or the Gnostic Mass, tearing it down afterwards while everybody else was already going to the pub. I was working as a treasurer, which mostly meant chasing people for dues, which is definitely not what I expected I would do joining the O.T.O, but that was my most of my experience. It all came to a grinding halt when, in summer of 2017, after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in the US, it turns out that a good number of my brethren were neo-Nazis or fascists. And they were pretty much defended by a specific person, James Wasserman. It's not with us anymore. He passed 1 year ago. And they were very like this neo-fascist, neo-Nazi group inside the O.T.O was connected with all the right people. Let's put it like that. It went more deeper than that. I uncovered, besides that, rape scandals and other terrible things that I wrote about in my articles that maybe I can link them to you. My point that I want to say, so I don't want to talk, I won't really speak about this, but when I want to speak about the fact that, that's where I was coming from. I was at a point in my life where I kind of lost any hope in any meaningful way to engage in a magical community. I really felt that my family had betrayed me, and especially because I didn't tell you that as I was, pretty much like speaking very publicly about the fact that the O.T.O was harboring this kind of types, I got doxxed. I received death threats, 8 sham threads about coming to Redwells and firebomb the place. Fun things, right? So I was a very low point in my life, thinking, well, first of all, I wasted almost 10 years of my life. And the reality there is that I came to realization I was coming out of a cult. Because as much as I say that the O.T.O is small, as much as I say that the O.T.O doesn't have any money, doesn't have any influence really, it's not Scientology, but they, like Scientology, they really make use of what L. Ron Hubbard used to call the fair game. That is, if you're out, it's fair game that we will do anything to you because you are a betrayer. You just it doesn't matter. Like you're an enemy and you must be taken down. And then the pandemic hits, right? Because that's when there was a 1-2 pretty much of events. And I was thinking, okay, now I'm still processing this big depression that hit me, from realizing that my family betrayed me and tried to put me in harm's way. And I am locked at the time I was living with my now ex-girlfriend in a very nice but very small apartment on City Road, near the Eagle, the famous Eagle from the nursery rhyme. So, and I remember that we took that apartment because we were like, well, you know what, we're never gonna stay in here. Like it's small, but it's close to our jobs, and we're always gonna be out. Little did we know that we were going to spend like 24 days, 7 days a week into 4 walls, pretty much. And that's when I realized that I had something to do. And that something to do was going back to my magical training. The O.T.O was not my beginning with magic. The O.T.O, in fact, was a later chapter of my magical evolution, magical path, if you want. I first started getting involved with Thelema, with Aleister Crowley's teachings in the early to mid 90s. I mean, I discovered Crowley in 1990, but I was 12 at the time, so yeah, I wasn't doing much. A few years later, I would buy the Magic in Theory and Practice, the Italian version, which is terrible. I mean, there's a new edition now, but the ones that I had was the 1972 edition, edited by Grant. By the way, today is Kenneth Grant's Greater Feast, so a drink, a toast to Kenneth Frater Elsic. And he did the 1972 edition with John Simons, which is it's an okay edition. The problem is that the Italian translator did not understand most of it, so there's literally bits and pieces that are not, it's not they're not translated, they're missing. You know, like you can read in Italian, the sentences don't make sense because at some point the translator just gave up. It's like, I don't know what this is about. I'm gonna give up. That was the book that I grew up with. A few years later, in 1998, I joined the AA, one of the many lineages that there are out there, and not one of the main ones. Because it's funny, whenever I speak with Thelemites, especially from the United States, they still are hell-bent into believing that there are only two lineages of the AA, well, the temporal AA. There's either like the one by J. Daniel Gunther or the one by David Schumacher, or Phyllis Seckler before him. It's not really like that, especially when you start leaving the Anglo-Saxon sphere, especially when you go to Italy and you think about, many, it's so much more complex. And I'm very glad that I've noticed that in the last few years, more English translation of French occultism, of German occultism, Italian not so much. There's only one book on Giuliano Kremers, which I suggest all of you to get it, just to give you an idea that, like, the esoteric milieu is much more complex than the Golden Dawn, Theosophy, and Aleister Crowley, which, by the way, we owe them a lot. So anyway, like, back to what I was saying, and if you notice, I'm rambling because that's what I do. That's my style. My style. That's why this is called the Ramblenomicon. It was a name given to given to this format. I hope you can still feel follow the threads. Anyway, like I said, 1998 got my initiation in the AA, and I became an aspirant, as they call it. And so I had my magical training. A few years later, I would start, translating in Italian Kenneth Grant and Michael Bertio. I would go to Chicago and meet Michael Bertio, receive my consecration as a bishop from him in 2006. So I had a lot. I had studied a lot before the O.T.O. And when I was finding myself into forums with Zoom and nothing else, I was thinking maybe I can teach this, right? Maybe I can share this with more people and help them make sense of this experience. Because the years that I spent in the AA, of course, I trained some people in the system. However, I started feeling like what I was noticing is that less and less people were really willing to go through a very specific training, a very intense training. The AA training can be seen as a doctorate in magic. Okay, you are expected to have read a lot of stuff. You're expected to have a general understanding of practice. You're expected to, I don't want to say to be as well read as Crowley was, but certainly that's what he was expecting, and that's how he laid out the system. That's how I was trained. And then, over the years, I realized that maybe this is not really working anymore for this time, this day and age. Not because it's not valuable, it's because it really sets maybe the bar a little bit too high for the kind of times we live in right now. And so what I did is that I already had a patron at the time, because I was like, at the time I was like starting to write a book, still writing it. Still haven't finished it. And so some of my friends were like, I would like to support you. Why don't you put up like a Patreon page? And for the first year, so talking 2019 till the pandemic hit, Patreon was made of like maybe 5 to 10 people. Some of them are here tonight. Hello, Gemma, Laura, Lawrence. And I decided, okay, let's go back to that format. It's a format whereby I feel that I can focus myself into this. Maybe get a little bit of support, because, by the way, my main job, I used to, my day job, as they say. I was a musician for the longest time, and then I started working as a freelance in digital marketing. And as the pandemic hit, there was no job anymore. There was not much to be made anymore. So I thought that could be a way where maybe I can get something back for the energy and the time that I put into this. I didn't think that we would ever get numbers, because I was still thinking, yes, I have this idea that magic can help people, like maybe starting a regular practice whereby you learn to breathe, pranayama, where you learn to focus and visualize, where you learn to become acquainted with the various elements that make your being, and then maybe going forward. But I was thinking at the end of the day, nobody's gonna care. Um, I was wrong because what happened there is that in the first 6 months of this, so just to give you an idea, we're still talking of the times where we're strict lockdowns, even if, as we know right now, our governments here in the UK, they were partying, but we were still in strict lockdowns, and we were not going out, we could not go out. And so in the first 6 months, I went from 12 people to, I think it was like 90 or something like that. And what surprised me is that I was putting out weekly lessons. Like that's, I took some of the ideas of the book I was writing, which is a magical primer. Yet another, I know, that's what sells, unfortunately. Well, you'll see what it comes out. There's a little bit of bits and pieces there, maybe new there. But I was getting those lessons and pretty much like setting each week. This week you learn this and you do this. This week you learn this and you do this. Well, like I said, at the end of the first 6 months, we had around 90 people, and we had 90 people that were doing magic, like all of them. Um, that's where the concept of the Ramblenomicon came to be, because I realized that one way to keep everybody engaged with a constant magical practice was then bringing back a little bit of the AA system. That is, the the superior or the teacher that tests or checks out the student, but we would do it like this, like we would gather every week, and we still do, we gather every week on Wednesdays at 8:30, and people would just come online from all over the world. We have a lot of Americans. We have people in Germany, people in Australia, people in South Korea. So it was really like everybody coming together, and everybody would say, okay, this is what I've done this week. This is my experience with this practice, and then asking questions. Um, it was the same experience as the AA, only translated to the 21st century, of making use of all the tools we have today, because we would not just use, Zoom as streaming. We would use, I would send out lessons often, maybe as like, if there was a mantra, I would record the mantra. If maybe, I am a music producer, so from time to time I would like drop some binaural beats into that can help like bring the mantra more to life. And we did like path workings. And so it was really like it was coming together. Okay. Something that I noticed is that we ended up doing more magic there, and we still do, than I ever did in all my years in O.T.O. Again, most of you maybe will not know, but the O.T.O, there's no real magic in it, or rather, there's a beautiful experience, which is the experience of the Gnostic Mass, and there's the experience of each degree. But it's being a quasi-Masonic, a paramasonic system. Uh, the degrees of initiations are very passive. There are things done to you, right? You enter a room like the Golden Dome, or like in Masonry. You enter a room, and there's pretty much there's a plethora of allegories and symbology around you that you should soak in, and there are like actions are done and words are said, and you have to like try to get to get all of this into you, like let it wash over you, and then you go home and maybe you think about what happened, and maybe you meet with the initiator and you ask questions. By the way, that never happened in the O.T.O here in the UK. The initiators would just not be available for post initiation talks, which is really bad. But if you and then there is the Gnostic Mass. The Gnostic Mass is one of the most beautiful rituals I ever had the honor to be celebrating, and I celebrated Gnostic Mass in every role apart from priestess, because there's a no, really we're not going to discuss that, but there's a huge issues in with heteronormativity, gender heteronormativity in the O.T.O right now. So I was a child. It's kind of fun. I was a deacon and I was a priest most of the time. It is one of the most beautiful rituals. I really hope that as the pandemic subsides, I'll be able to start organizing Gnostic masses here in London or in Glastonbury. So possibly both places, So I hope that some of you will have the chance to come and see them. But also the Gnostic Mass, unless you are part of the team, you're passive. You're one of the congregation, and being it an Eucharistic ritual, what you do is that you partake of the food, well, of the bread and wine that is given to you and has been consecrated and transubstantiated to become the the magical link to the egregore. Okay. In the audio, you won't find not even the LBRP, not even the Star Ruby, or not even the Star Sapphire. It's another kind of worm, so we're not going to open that. But let's say if you think of joining the audio and learning, okay, today we gather together and we scry the ethers. That's not going to happen. In Ameth Lodge, there were some informal groups that would come together and we would do that, but it was not officially sanctioned. There was no instruction into it. Like you had to learn on your own, and I quickly realized that I was one of those that knew more than everybody else, because I've been doing this for 20 years before joining the OTO. And this is what I noticed is that like in Magick Without Tears, in this group that came together over the pandemic, we've done more magic, more actual magic than have we ever done in Ameth Lodge. And let me tell you, Ameth Lodge is, if not one of the biggest lodges of the OTO in the world. When I left, we had 93 members. I know, it's fun, but we had exactly 93 members. The pandemic, of course, decimated those numbers, as you can expect. We already had 90 members, as I told you, by August to 2020. And what I didn't know that we would get bigger, in fact. But before going forward, I want to just read you. There's a couple of things that two of my, I don't want to say students. We're just more a community. We all learn from each other, really. Before coming here, I was asking some of them like, hey, what's been your experience? Because I'm gonna talk about our experience. So, what is there anything you want to share? And this is from Mark, and he said, what we do here isn't what the majority of Thelemites do. What we do here real is actual magic, especially those undertaking the Arbatel operation. We'll talk about it in a short while. I will make it clear that this is not just another Crowley is a prophet of God and infallible kind of place. If anything, I will mention the post-Thelema label. That's something that I came to describe what I do as post-Thelemic. Some critics came up at me and it's like, you cannot have Thelema without Crowley. It should be pros-Crowley Thelema. And I was like, you know what? This is not a new idea. That's what Kenneth Grant has been doing. That's what Frater Akkad was doing. That was Nemo was doing. Crowley is great, but it's not the center of it all. And then this is from Kelly, that she said, I've met a few occultist Thelemites here in the Bay Area, where she lives, and when I mention my practice, they're always blown away. It seems like most of them come at it from a place of study, not magic. And when they do magic, it's an occasional thing, and they're blown away that I have a daily practice. This is something that I really insisted, right? Like we had to come together and we had to keep up a daily practice. We had to feel those days of tedium, of time that feels always the same. I'm pretty sure all of you felt like that. I still feel like that. I still think it's 2020, right? I still think that we just had 2019 New Year's Eve, and in fact it's 2 years later. But my point is, that is how you fight this passivity, this sort of, this stasis that was very conductive, at least for me, to start flirting with deep depression. I'm pretty sure that I'm speaking about something that some of you have felt, maybe most of you have felt, maybe most of you are still feeling. And, going back to well, if we cannot go out anymore, we cannot plan holidays anymore. We cannot visit our friends, I don't know, in the States or in continental Europe anymore. Well, at least we do magic every day. With no and this group became a sort of like almost an accountability project, like, have you done your have you done your LBRPs today, have you done this today, and it worked because 2 years later now we have um how many let me see the number. Well, right now I have 127 active members at the height, and that was more or less till was that maybe May last year, before the relatively when before everybody start to saying, or everybody should say, our governments start to tell us, like, the pandemic is over. We have the vaccines, it's all fine. So when before the lockdowns worldwide start to ease, I had almost 200 people. And this is not a numbers name. It's not like, hey, I have numbers, that's great. It kind of proved that if you give a very inclusive, a very welcoming environment, and if you lay out concepts that are not meant to be easy, and I've always been very adamant about it, magic, it's not easy. Like, you can start easy, or rather, and then at some point you have to face reality that you have to start engaging with more and more complex concepts and practices. But if you lay out like the roadmap very clearly, people will enjoy it. People will do magic. Um, in many of my lessons, in many of my Ramblenomicon, or maybe interviews that I do on podcast, I often say it, and I will keep repeating forever, that magic is the birthright of humanity. We are meant to do magic. We are meant to use these tools to alchemically transmute ourselves into what we must become. And of course, you can entertain the idea of turning the human lead into the divine gold. That's a beautiful image. That's a beautiful allegory to entertain. But even if you're not a theist, and even if you don't believe in God, the idea is that there are a set of like very specific tools that can not only make you better, but can help you in times where resilience is needed. And I mean, go back to the tarot, right? That is precisely one of the lessons of the fool's journey. The fool starts very wide-eyed and starry-eyed, and then he has to undergo a lot of troubles and tribulations before he ends up into, well, the universe if you're a Thelemite, or the world again if you don't like the Book of Thoth, which you should like, by the way. So what have we done exactly? Um, I have some notes here. So yes, so when we started with the Magic in Practice lesson was really like lay out the foundations, the foundation of a magical pyramid. So for me, it was always go back to the ways I was told, like, you have to start with breathing. If there's no breathing, there's no magic. And this is not just like repeating book 4 where Crowley starts with pranayama. I found out that that's fundamental. I try to do magic, just by repeating words on a grimoire, and maybe something happened sometimes, maybe sometimes didn't. And then I did the same with a full blown, very complex pranayama practice, and boom, things were happening on a much stronger level. So I taught that. I taught how to, engage with the pentagrams, with the hexagrams. I really did follow the Golden Dawn-esque Thelemic pattern, because that is my background, that is my tradition. And then at some point, I mean, I start saying, maybe we reached the glass ceiling with this, because I don't think we can do rituals together. I don't think we can scry together. And a lot of people, some of them are here tonight, hello Jonathan, were like, no, 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 we must do it. It can work. And they convinced me. And so we start scrying the eaters, the Enochian eaters on Zoom. I never, okay, it works, yes. I never thought that something that could work out. And so what I did is that I was thinking if I can actually show you there, maybe. Yeah, you can see there. I set up an altar, I put the camera in front of it. I did all the incenses. Let me put this back here. Okay, perfect. All the incenses, and I would start chanting like the Enochian, the key of the Aeters, and then people would just like scry into either their own mirror or a specific mirror and shoe stone there on the altar. And I'll tell you, we have plenty of diary of very interesting views of the eaters. We I think we're gonna do Death next. Oh, yeah, I don't remember. Like we're at the 25th eater now. We do one a month. Um, that was something that I never foresaw happening. Like I never thought that doing magic of that kind over the internet, over Zoom, could work. It did work. We created a group daemon, like the idea of every group should have like a sigil or a lamen or a spirit that oversees the group. We created it together. We started first of all, we started using it as a way to bind ourselves together every time we would attempt the astral projection into the astral temple of Malkuth using a technique from Ron Clark's The Eight Temples meditation, which is a series of path workings, Kabbalistic path workings that are loosely based on Franz Bardon's teachings. Um, and when we use that framework and we use this group daemon to basically bind us together and send us to the same place. And it worked because, we would then say, the way we would do it is that, everybody would like just meet, do a specific ritual that we created together at the same time. And then you would have like some time to visualize where you were. And I was the one always like hiding things into this place. Like from time to time, I would like, I don't know, a platonic solid, for instance, which is something that I found out in my own astral experiences, that those are shapes that usually come out very strongly in the astral. And lo and behold, some people would say, "Hey, was there like a strange tetrahedron that like all like colored like it was like purple?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly what it was." So that was another experience that we had. Another big moment for us was when I was invited by Greg and Dana Newkirk of the Hellier series to talk about my experience with Thelema and what they call the ultra terrestrials on their Phenomenacon online conference. They did this thing in September 2020, and it was a massive event, almost, I don't know, 600, 800 people. And after that, the community got a lot of new people in. It was a huge intake. And then I realized that, okay, how do I marry my interest in Hellier? And if you haven't seen Hellier, if you don't know what I'm talking about, um, first of all, you can go and watch it for free on YouTube. It's a let's say it's a weird paranormal investigation kind of series. There are 15 episodes that starts like that and ends with Alan Grimfield and the Stars of Fire. So it's if you don't watch it, go watch it. It's especially, I would say, if you're one of those people interested in the occult that find it very difficult to maybe consider the idea of UFOs or cryptids or I don't know, fairies as part of your serious occult practice. Then again, most of you here, love Kenneth Grant, so I think it's I'm preaching to the converted here. But if you haven't watched earlier, go watch it. And so, like I said, like we had a lot of people coming in, and I realized that okay, let's try something else. So yes, Alison is asking, what was the show? Yes, it's Hellier with the H. Perfect. Yeah. So, what we, what they're trying to do in the show is that they're using paranormal investigations techniques to communicate with the other. I'm simplifying it here. And especially they use something called the Estes method. The Estes method is a technique that was devised by two of the team, the Hellier team, And pretty much you have to have like a spirit box, which is I don't have one, but my understanding is that it's a machine you put your headphones on, and this thing scans the FM or AM radio waves very very fast. Like it's random, you cannot control it, and the person who has the cans on acts as an operator, and as the machine scans the frequencies, you might hear words. Now, those outside of you will ask you question, and you cannot hear anything because you're completely like cut off from everything around you. And what's interesting is that it's almost like a modern day Ouija board, because people would ask question and the person inside would answer. And as you know, from time to time, it's very difficult to. I mean, from time to time, the message is not clear, but from time to time, the message is incredibly clear. And again, you will see examples of this in Hellier. Recently, like literally last week, Tommy Kelly of adventuresinwoo.com had like a podcast video podcast on his YouTube channel. He tries an Estes method, and it's uncanny. Yeah, you have to watch that because it's really interesting. Now, I decided to spice it up a little bit because I brought in the LAM protocols by by Michael Stanley. So I taught people on the community how to use LAM as a spaceship, pretty much, to go out there, like getting LAM in front of you. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, possibly on the video I will stamp the face of LAM here. And LAM is a painting by Lester Crowley that was given to Kenneth Grant, and Kenneth Grant made it central to his practice. And LAM really looks like the classic, gray alien. And we're talking several decades before the gray aliens were ever seen as that. So there's an interesting synchronicity there. So what we did is that we used LAM as a spaceship, and while we were pretty much inside the LAM spaceship, we were projecting our intention to the operator with the can that was undergoing the Estes method. So I tried to mix a little bit of magic with this very like paranormal investigator technique, and it worked very well. We had, I think we, I mean, I might be mistaken here, but I think we have over 200 pages of diary of this experience that I want to edit and release at some point, because it's interesting, right? Because we were looking for something, and I'm not sure we found what we were looking for, but we definitely found something, and something was speaking back to us. And then we came to what we're doing these days. A lot of people in the community were asking me about grimoire magic. Now, grimoire magic is not one of my realm of expertise. I'm not Jake Stratton-Kent. I'm not Stephen Skinner. I'm not David Rankin. However, I've done a little bit of it. I work with the Arbatel, which is a grimoire that deals with the 7 Olympic spirits. And I worked my way to all the 72 demons of the Goetia. Because when you're young and crazy, that's what you want to do. Especially when you're goth. So when you're a goth kid, it's like, I'm going to do the demons, one a week. It didn't work out very well. Let's say that was a very interesting 72 weeks of my life. However, I had a little bit of experience with that. So I immediately thought, okay, we're going to try grimoires together, but we're going to do it right. First of all, we're going to start with the Arbatel and not with the Goetia, because we're going to meet the souls of the spheres of the planets before going to meddle with the chthonic creatures or the rules over this earth. Let's put it like that. And what I did is that I created a series of practice. If you've read the Arbatel is sounds more like maybe a philosophical, magical text. There's very little practice in it. Like, you can read between the lines and you can derive some practice out of it, but it's not like a manual, like it tells you, okay, do this, do this, do this, do that. There's some other grimoires that are definitely very like schematic, if you want. Their battle is not like that. So I created a practice around it, and then I insisted that each person who wanted to be part of it, they would have to well, get all the tools, and so people went and get the sword and the crown and the belt and the robe and the circle. I think Mars is in here. Mars designed some beautiful circles. Uh, you can go and buy them if you want. And I think Olivia tried very hard to get a sword delivered, and she couldn't get her in time, and she made her own out of tinfoil, which is perfectly fine if you ask me. My point was like, as long as you put your intention and you show your dedication, uh, the spirit will accept the tribute. I know that a lot of grimoire purists will come back to me and say that's absolutely wrong. You need the sword made of bat guano or something like that. And I'm like, well, agree to disagree. Let's put it like that. So exactly. Marcin is saying that there's a lot of preparation for the real practice in Arbatel, contemplating on the philosophy and getting to the right frequency, so to say. That is also one of the reasons why I decided that, because even how do you do this away from each other, right? How do you do this when usually the way I used to do it, either on my own or with a few others, was like gathering together, and there would be like a magician, a designated magician, like going through all the invocations, and a scryer maybe, and then the people around would maybe act as battery around the circle. Here we were scattered around the world, literally around the world, and my point was that if you want to do the grimoire, we can do it, but it's important for you to show dedication, and that means like study what the Arbadel is about, even if it can be, it looks and feels maybe stuffy in places, but that's part of the experience. That's part of how you do magic. That's part of how you really show your will to go and persist through the operation. Um, Yesterday, Venus turned month. Hagit, the spirit of Hagit, manifested in many ways here in Blackheath, where I am right now, and across the world. So we're now in month 3. We're gonna finish in May, and it's gonna be interesting to see how this 7 months operation, one spirit a month, will impact on each of us on our own initiation, on our own spiritual progression. Um, so yes, the thing is, and I'm starting to wrap it up now, so then maybe we can open to your questions. What I noticed, what I've done in the last 2 years, I've done a lot of magic, possibly more magic than I've ever done in my life. And I always pride myself to say, yeah, no, I'm a real magician. I've done a lot of magic in my life. I think I've done more, but part of it is because again we had a lot of time, right? Unfortunately, but part of it because the Magic Without Tears community presented a lot of challenges and a lot and like, how do we do this? How do we come together? How do we, people that never met in real life, like we had a couple of meetings this summer when I was still living in Glastonbury, as soon as the lockdowns were eased and we were all vaxxed and we were like observing social distance as much as we could. We, some of us, met, and then we've been doing like some meetups in London. However, the bulk of our community is in the United States, and of course, we haven't seen each other. Uh, and so, overcoming these challenges was something that actually I think really made the community gel together, and really highlighted all the positives and the negatives of what it's like to come together only through this online interface, only through Zoom. It showed me that no matter how the world is going to be in 2 months, 6 months, 2 years, I feel that's so important for this format, the online format, not to go completely away, because some of our members are disabled. They cannot leave their house. They never could, but they could find a way to actually, well, make friends along the way that have like similar interests as them, and practice magic while it was impossible for them before. So, for instance, like right now, on Monday, I will be in what's that, in Hackney at Helgis, the Helgis bar, to do one face-to-face seminar, the first in forever. Uh, and that's important. We cannot like live stream that, but I'm already thinking, okay, the next one will have to be live streamed because it's so important to keep being inclusive. I feel that we're going towards a new society where a lot of the orders, a lot of the groups, a lot of the covens, a lot of the circles that existed so far will disappear. Will disappear mostly because the way they've been acting and the way they've been working for so long is that they always like dangle the carrot of the secrets. Oh, you're gonna join us because we have the secrets. You cannot find it anywhere. Google made the secrets moot. Like you can find everything online, everything. Like I cannot stress this enough. There's no secret anymore. What it's important though is that groups can still come together using a a mixed approach, live, online, and you can get people that were always felt, forgotten. You can get them in, and you can get their valuable insight. One of the people that's one of our best crier is a person that is a very shy person in life, and the person that told me that never felt that people took him seriously before. So I was really like I was touched by that because I've seen how the O.T.O work, and it's not just the O.T.O. I've seen it in other groups as well. In the times before, front-facing social groups, there was always like a lot of people, maybe people like me that can be they're very extroverted, and the problem is that you always ended up putting the focus only on those people, maybe forgetting the incredible, valuable insight from others. Well, Zoom, let's say the online experience taught me that going forward that will change. Um, and that's it. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed hearing what I've done in the last 2 years, and that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.